Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. We are on our very special 8th annual regular season prediction show, where we're going to basically, both of us come in and predict the wins and losses during the season, where we end up, and where we end up for each individual game. We're not the same. I know that much going in, and we'll find out where we differ on this thing. Couple things before we completely get into this. The Seahawks work out and sign outside linebacker Tyus Bowser, and cornerback Thean Hicks. And Bowser's got some nice background with the Baltimore Ravens as their outside linebacker for a number of years. He's got 70 some odd starts over the course of 6 seasons. And
he also hasn't played in 2 years.
He hasn't played in a couple of years. He had an Achilles, and then he that forced him to miss the last 5 games of 2022 and 2023. Had a knee injury that kept him out all year. So he's just trying to get back into things. We signed with the practice squad. You know, when you really think about it, he's coming in just for a depth piece, potentially. That's it. That's all we're asking for him, of him right now.
I mean, it's a practice squad spot. So if he is healthy enough and they think he is back close to what he was with pre-injuries, then
he can work
it's a massive bonus.
Roster. Yeah.
And if he doesn't, if they're, basically like, the explosiveness is gone and all of that, you let him go and put someone else on the practice squad. So there's no risk, none whatsoever.
Right. And then the other kid's just kind of an upside guy that they want to take a look at. And that's about it. They did release tight end Jack Westover from IR with an injury settlement. Don't know the details on that and how far along that needs to progress before Seahawks would be able to sign him back. And then they released offensive tackle Garrett Greenfield from the practice squad to make room for the other 2 additions. So that's it. There were really no other news at this point. Pretty early in the process before we head into the week prior to game 1. So a little bit of time here. Okay.
Well, there is one other update that we could give, because John Schneider came out and gave us some injury updates. And the update on Nuwasu is that he is going to be back sooner rather than later. Should be back week 1 or around week 1, whether he plays week 1 or week 2. We don't know. Jenkins is on a similar timetable, maybe week 1, maybe not, but in that range. And Abe Lucas is going to be out a while. He says they absolutely expect him to play this year, but that doesn't mean soon.
It could be week 8. It could be week 12. It could be next year. I mean, really.
I mean, it could be, but they said that they absolutely expect him to play this year.
They expect him right now as of August 30th. Yes.
I know.
Things could change. He could have a setback. He had a setback in, during the summer. So we'll see. I hope he comes back. I hope it's 100% health. From what all things are indicating, from what is being said, is that this is not a long-term chronic injury. This is something that they've solved with this procedure, although they're not saying exactly what the procedure was, but that as soon as it's healed, it's 100%. He's 100%. So it's worth waiting for.
Which is what they said, but we do still have Pete Carroll saying it's a chronic thing that is always going to bother him.
Well, yeah.
So
he didn't say it's always going to bother him. He said it was chronic, but maybe they fixed that with some sort of surgery. and it's no longer chronic. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Okay, so predictions. This is like a super fun show. Everything that we've done in the off season is kind of built up to this, and I think what you'll see in my predictions is the optimism side of the equation on this thing for me, because as time has gone on in the off season, we went through free agency, we went through the draft process, we went through mini camps, now training camp. We saw the preseason games. We're starting to see this roster kind of come together, and I've gotten excited about it. Like, there's some legit opportunities for this team to be much more improved than last year. Last year, we won 9 games with a highly dysfunctional roster and a highly dysfunctional coaching staff. Those things are resolved, and I think there's a large opportunity here to have big improvement. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. I kind of made a list. So I made this list of how I made my schedule predictions. And I want the critique from Keith, because Keith is coming in, I think, a little less optimistic than me, although he is more optimistic than he usually is. Yes?
No, I'm about as optimistic as I usually am when we do this.
All right.
In that, but holding up our reputations, you are the eternal optimist, and I always come off as, the grumpy old man of Seahawks land. And, okay. I'm okay with that, but, I don't think we're that far off. Really, it comes down to, how the season ends and whether, who's playing all their players at the end of the year type of situation. But yeah, I'm under where you are, overall. So go through and give me this thing.
Okay. This is exciting. This is exciting stuff. I think all of our listeners are going to come away convinced that I have all of the right, the right criteria here. So
we'll see.
6 of the first 9 games are at home, followed by a week 10 bye week. So that's going to be really important. Drafting of and the emergence of Byron Murphy, the resurgence of Tariq Woolen, next level for Devon Witherspoon. Trey Brown could very well be the second best corner on the defense, on almost all defenses. Like, he's really that good. The ascendance of Christian Haynes, I believe that he starts. You think Bradford's going to be there? That's fine. I think Christian Haynes eventually ends up being a starting offensive lineman sometime
I do
this
too,
year.
but I think it's on the left side.
and that's entirely possible. The improvement of Charles Cross, we've heard a lot about that in training camp. The next step improvement of Derick Hall. Mike Morris is having a great summer. He's ready to kind of emerge. The trio of safeties there are better than we had last year. The offensive focus on DK Metcalf and kind of his ability to kind of stretch the offense. Jackson Smith and Jigba is primed to have a really good year, could emerge as the number 2 overall target in this offense. Ken Walker, from all indications, looks to be improved this year and explosive. Everything we're hearing out about camp, didn't see much in preseason of him as well, so we'll have to wait and see. Tyrese Knight's better than advertised. The team went out and signed Connor Williams at its weakest position potentially. We brought in Jonathan Hankins. We haven't seen much of him yet. I think that's going to pay big dividends. Question marks. So these are my questions. Those are all the positives. Question marks. They give me a little bit of pause. The status of Abe Lucas, the health of the tight end room, the ability of Jerome Baker to stay on the field, and is he a net positive or is he going to be more of a liability? And the depth at linebacker is kind of a question mark still for me. And then Jason Myers, is he going to be consistent? We saw that kind of in the preseason, kind of back and forth a little bit. So those are my kind of question marks. So I have a lot more in the positive bucket than I do in the negative. What say you, Keith?
I say that if you are starting your prediction based on the fact that they were 9-7 last year, and like they just missed the playoffs and they were a winning team, and then they got better.
9-8.
9-8. Well, whatever. 9-8. I'm used to a 16 game schedule still. 9-8. They gave up 360, or they scored 364 points last year. They gave up 402. That equates, if you use the analytics with the Pythagorean win loss, of having 2 fewer wins than losses. Now, in an odd numbered season, you can't really do that. But basically it comes in 7-9 in a 16 game season. And then, so either 8-9 or 7-10 is basically how good they were, according to that metric. And if you're basing wins and losses from a 7-win team and improvement from that, I think you can overestimate and get yourself to too many wins fairly quickly. But if, cause instead of going from 9 wins, you start at 7, which is how good the team actually was, because they were bad on offense and defense. I think you end up with a more conservative win total for your prediction.
Interesting. Okay. That makes sense to me, but also we ended up with 9 wins. So I'm going to go off that. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to show the schedule on the screen, and we're going to diminish ourselves to the left side there. And we're going to fill in these boxes as we go. And so why don't you go ahead and start with week number 1, Keith? Where are you at?
Week 1 versus Denver. And so Denver comes in, they're rebuilding, kind of starting over, around a rookie quarterback. The Russell Wilson thing blew up in their face and he's gone. And this is a team coming in that's just simply not quite ready for prime time. I think they're an ascending team. They bottomed out before and now they're coming up. But they're not back. And I think this is a relatively easy win for Seattle.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. And, oops, I don't want to do that. I don't want to slide over there. That's all right. I agree. I mean, they're going to bring a rookie quarterback into Lumen Field. I hope we completely ruin his debut. I think we will. I think that Sean Payton might be onto something though, long term with that.
Mm-hmm. I do think he is.
It is early in the process, and they've got a lot of issues. Got a young roster. Their defense is not good. Their offense might be worse, and this is probably a bottom 5 to 6 team. Now, to me, that's where they're at. But to a lot of other people, they've got an opportunity, quote unquote, to make some headway in the AFC West and not challenge Kansas City, but possibly come in second. They'd be in competition with
it's not a
the
good
Chargers
division
to do that.
It's not a good division this year. The Chargers are rebuilding. They seem to have kind of reached a point where they're going to start over. And the Raiders, they don't look good, especially at quarterback. It's kind of a one-horse race in that division with
Yes.
Kansas City. So Denver definitely has a chance to come in and be second. I don't think of them as a top 5 in the draft pick team, but I don't think of them as being over 500. And I think they're going to be better later in the year than they are early once these young players, get more acclimated.
Okay. So earlier last week, it was kind of rumored that the Patriots were looking at potentially starting Drake May to begin the season. And instead, the last couple days, they have indicated that Jacoby Brissett is going to be the guy. So I don't know that it necessarily matters because their roster, I think, is probably dead last in the NFL as far as the quality of
and I think that's why they
there.
made that decision, was because their overall roster quality. This is a team that is in the process of bottoming out and starting over. And
that's a good point.
Why ruin your super young rookie quarterback by getting him shell shocked by, getting sacked 8 times a game? And so I think that's why they're going with Brissett. They're going to, let him get in there, give May more time to acclimate before they throw him out there. And I think that's a really smart choice.
I agree. All right. So you've got a win as well there.
Oh yeah.
Look at the Seahawks going 2-0 to start the year. Now this is the first test game. The Dolphins, it's at home, which may make a difference now again. We haven't had home field advantage for, it seems like, forever, Keith. Like, it's just not really existed. And something tells me this is the year where it starts to turn the corner in our favor again, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Being a defensive oriented team, I think ultimately could be very exciting for fans. So this game is interesting. I mean, everyone's talking about Miami, Tagliavoa, Rasheem Mostert, Devon Achane, Jalen Wright, Jalen Waddell, Tyreek Hill, Odell Beckham Jr., although I think he's going to be out when we play them, Braxton Berrios, Chop Robinson, Bradley Chubb on the edge on their defense, Calais Campbell, Jordan Brooks is there at linebacker, which will be interesting. But for me, I think this team kind of comes in overrated, and I think the Seahawks are underrated. I think their defense is not good, and our defense is amazing. I think our defense stops their offense, and I think their defense does not stop our offense. And I think we come away with a win here.
See, this is where where our first spot is, where we differ. I've got the Dolphins winning this one. It's one of those matchup things. It's Seattle's first real test. And I would be worried about the Seahawks looking ahead at the Lions too, because that's been kind of a building rivalry the last couple of years. And I just think it's, that's a really hard matchup for any team. And the fact that, because they've already got two excruciatingly fast, small wide receivers in Waddle and Hill. And then they just added another one, Mr. D. Eskridge is there, which kind of almost fits too perfectly in that if one of those guys gets hurt, they just slide him into that role and pretend nothing happened until he gets hurt, like 3 plays later. But yeah, I mean, it's a hard matchup. It's the first real test. And, I just don't see the Seahawks jumping out to this, 3-0 start and getting people too excited. I think there's going to be a hiccup in there. And that's where I got our hiccup.
Yeah. I mean, that could definitely happen. I think I'm standing by what I said. I think their defense is not going to be good, and it's not going to be good enough to stop Seattle at all. And I think our defense matches up well against their offensive weapons, against their quarterback. If you disrupt him a little bit, get him out of his comfort zone and timing. And then our corners have been proving in training camp that they are very sticky. And so I like our odds in this game, but we'll see, because the next game is the one that's really hard. And I wish it wasn't. I mean, Monday Night Football, Seahawks have historically been very, very good. But we've got a new regime now, and he needs to prove himself that he's a coach that's going to get his team ready for prime time. This is about as tough as it gets. I think the Lions are one of the top 3 teams in the NFL right now, and maybe top 5, but they're right there. I think by the end of the year they're going to be right up there. This is away. We've won these last 2 games though. The last 2 seasons where they've been really hard games, high scoring games. This will be a fun matchup, regardless of who wins. This is going to be a fun game. It's going to be one of those, I think, rather than the Miami game, I think it's the Lions game for me that tells the tale on where this team is at as far as what they look like to other NFC teams. And this is the true test. And I've got them down for a loss.
I also have them down for a loss in this one. The last 2 years, the end result at the end of the year has been that Detroit was the better football team overall. But in those games, Seattle seems to always come up on top. which is fun and it's kind of awesome. But can you do it 3 times in a row? I don't know. And so I put it as a loss just for that reason. It's hard to pull that upset off 3 years in a row. So,
and they've really been working on their defense and their secondary.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be an interesting game, really interesting. And this could be a game. If we end up winning this game, this could be a situation where we saw the very first win in the Mike McDonald area where we out-coached and out-schemed a team, because I think that would be what it would take to win this game.
Yeah. Well, and the defensive coaching staff has the track record to prove that they are capable of it.
But is the team ready?
The offensive coaching staff has the pedigree and the proof that they could do it at the college level. And this will be the first real test of can the Seahawks outcoach another team, at least in terms of Seattle's offense. This is a real big test for Ryan Grubb, but honestly, I don't really have any real concerns about Ryan Grubb at the moment. I think he's unfortunately not going to last in Seahawks territory for very long because he's going to go be a head coach soon. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that game. I just think that in the end, it just doesn't quite work out.
Okay. Giants at Seahawks on October 6th, week number 5. What do you got?
The Giants are not a good football team, and they've got, they've got problems at quarterback and just everywhere. The Seahawks have got to be able to go win that game. It's at home against a bad team. That's when I don't feel even a little bit like worried about predicting a win.
So this is a team I think that we can score lots of points on. And so that's my prediction, is that we would definitely outscore them. And I don't think that they have got enough with Daniel Jones on offense to give us concern. They do have Malik Neighbors. I liked him in the draft. Jalen Hyatt, Wendell Robinson. They've got Devin Singletary as a running back, but their offensive line was poor last year, probably still poor this year. And then their defense really doesn't have anybody of note. Brian Burns is the only guy, really. Dexter Lawrence is in there, but he's by himself. Kayvon Thibodeau, Mika McFadden are there to rush the passer a little bit. But other than that, they really don't have anybody.
Yeah, Thibodeau and Lawrence will make some opposing quarterbacks like nervous, but there's not a lot around those two guys that I'm super excited about.
Thursday night football, October 10th. So just a few days later, we face the 49ers for the first time in the 2024 season at home, Thursday night again. Kyle Shanahan comes in and sees his first matchup since his loss last year against McDonald's defense in Baltimore. What can we expect in these matchups this year as far as just the head-to-head coaching matchups?
That's a good question, because Shanahan versus Pete Carroll was always, and then you had Sean McVay in that, and there's just that like trio of every one of those guys had a guy they couldn't beat and a guy they always beat. And Seattle's defense is different. It's a defense that is more ready, more schemed ready to
adaptable.
To slow San Francisco down than anything Pete Carroll did in the last 6 years. And it's a Thursday night game. It's a Thursday night game in which San Francisco has to travel. Seattle is lucky to be on the road. There is almost no time to practice between a Sunday and a Thursday night game. There's a walkthrough, and that's it. A lot of meetings, a walkthrough, and then you go out and play a game. And that extra travel the 49ers have to have is, it cuts into that. And it really does matter on those really short weeks. I struggled with this one. This one was hard. You put those factors in there. I think Seattle has improved. The 49ers aren't as good, although I do still think they're the top of the division. Has Trent Williams reported yet? He hasn't right now, but I mean, by then, yeah, he will by then. I put this down as a loss originally, but I don't feel great about that. Like, I could be talked into switching my vote to a win, but I've got it as a loss right now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to leave it blank for a second, and I'm going to try to talk you into it. So I think the 49ers are a little over advertised. I think their locker room is diminished slightly. I think their depth is diminished a little bit. I think their offensive line is overrated. I think Trent Williams makes it that way, and then everyone else. But I think they're susceptible on that offensive line to allowing some pressure. Now, Seattle wasn't able to do that last year because of the scheme. This year's completely different. We are not that same animal again. We are going to come at them hard and from all over the place. They're not going to know where it's coming from. I think that's really going to be a tell in this game with Brock Purdy, just not being able to handle that kind of pressure. And then that kind of takes away some of the weapons that they've got. Ayuk just signed his deal. Deebo Samuel's still there. Juwan Jennings. And then George Kittle, obviously. Christian McCaffrey's always going to be an issue. So I think on the defensive side, I think we've got the weapons on offense and the scheme now to neutralize some of their aggressiveness by getting the ball out quick and just kind of taking what the defense is going to give us. We weren't able to do that last year. We wanted to kind of try to dictate terms with our offense last year, and we were not that kind of an offense. I think this year now, where you're kind of adaptable, adjusting, taking what the defense gives you, Ryan Grubb's already said that he's got multiple things that he can do against any scheme. So if you're going to do this, I'm going to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we're really matched up well this year against them. And then you mentioned the X factors, the travel, the short week, et cetera, and then the coaching. I think we've got the edge. I honestly do, especially at home early in the season. This is going to be one of those games that helps define the rest of the season after this game for the Seahawks, for me. And like I've said, I've already told you I'm being optimistic. I'm going to put it as a win because I think we win this game. I really do.
Yeah, go ahead and leave it as a loss for me. You were unconvincing.
Wow. So you're gone 3-3 now.
I have them going 3-3 to open.
And I am at 5-1. I like my upside better than yours. Okay. Falcons. Seahawks at Falcons.
The Falcons aren't good. That's a win.
Okay. I think
even on the road. I don't have we don't need a lot of analysis on that game. That's kind of a bad football team.
Raheem Morris is the new head coach there. That's interesting. Kirk Cousins is going to get the start, but Michael Penix can come in anytime. That'll be interesting to watch. The Bills. This is an interesting game for me on the schedule. Bills at the Seahawks, and it's at a tough spot, I think, on the schedule. For me, if you've come off that 49er win earlier, and then you've beaten the Falcons on the road, and you're starting to get worn down a little bit, and this game might be a game that they kind of overlook on the schedule a little bit, get a little cocky. At least for me, they're at 6-1. They could come in with a little bit of overconfidence here, and this is a good team still, the Bills, although I don't believe that they're as good as they have been in the last three or 4 years.
Yeah, they've lost some pieces, and so they're descending a little bit, but I still think they're, a top 5 in the AFC, top 8 in the NFL kind of team. Just not in the top 3 like they were a couple years ago. Yeah, I've got this one as a loss. I just think that
me too.
I just have a hard time. That defense is still good, and you can only chase that quarterback around so much before the defense's legs get tired. And Plus, the Bills are really good in September and October. Under this current regime, they tend to fade more in, late November and December. And this is an October game. So,
so you have got
factor.
these guys at 4-4, 500. Now,
Yep.
on October 27th, so the end of October, you've got them at 500, 4-4,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to be really frustrating, I think, for the team if this happens. And they're going to start to question, everything. And that's a tough way to open, I think, considering everyone, a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people looked at the schedule and thought maybe this was an opportunity to start strong.
Yeah.
So where are your thoughts?
Some people are saying that,
through-ish?
but at the same time, the Seahawks are still getting picked to finish 4th in the NFC West. You come in, you're 4-4. You've battled,
not behind the Cardinals. No way.
Yes, go look at ESPN and everywhere. They're still being picked to be bad. Although some of the guys are starting to catch on that Seattle's defense is going to be good, and you're starting to see them get a little bit more love. But you have that first, the game where you've got the Dolphins, the Lions, the 49ers, and the Bills all in that 8 games. Those are tough games.
Those are tough games, and you didn't give them one of them.
Nope. And I don't think anyone's doubting anything at 4-4. I think at 4-4, you're putting your head down and you're getting back to work, because you know that at 4-4, you're in it. Like, you have every opportunity to make the playoffs at that point. And so I think that they're in a spot going up against the Rams the following week, knowing that they can go into their bye week and be feeling really good about getting healthy and coming back out for the rest of the season.
Now, a lot of people have the Rams at like 11 wins this year.
I don't.
Second in the NFC West, battling with the 49ers in case they stumble a little bit. I see them similar to the way I saw them at this time last year. Now, last year at this time, we thought that they were going to be a 7-win team. Now, I don't think they're going to be a 7-win team, but I also don't think they're going to be an 11-win team. No. I think they're going to be somewhere in the 8 to 9 range, and I think they're vulnerable. I think Matthew Stafford's vulnerable. I think he's getting older, but he's behind an offensive line that is like okay. Jonah Jackson and Avila and Dodson are there. Habestein, Arlick Jackson. I think those guys are okay, but they're older. They're getting older, and I just think that they're susceptible to that a little bit. And then the defense, obviously, missing a big, huge component there. And then everyone else is just kind of okay. Mm-hmm. They're okay on defense. So I got it as a win. I have it as a win.
I have it as a win. I don't agree that they're a good team. I think that their win-loss total last year was propped up with them out coaching Seattle extremely.
Yes,
and that Seahawks had the better talent on the roster, but the Rams had the better coach by far, and that resulted in 2 wins. 2 wins for them, 2 losses for Seattle. And it made their season and it broke Seattle's. I don't expect that to be a thing. I think Seattle's roster is better. I don't think the Rams roster is better. If anything, it's diminished because you lose the best defensive lineman in the NFL. And, plus you get rid of the coaching, deficit. And I think Seattle wins it easy, especially since it's at home.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So the bye week. So at the bye week, you are 5-4.
Mm-hmm.
I am 7-2. That seems big to me. That seems like a big difference. Am I just like pie in the sky too happy about this roster, or do I really have a shot at getting there? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's a shot at them getting there, but I think you're asking for a lot of things to break right for Seattle. And they have to avoid having an off game, a down game, or a trap game. And they just have to play up in all of those big games.
And we've just got a new coaching staff all the way around. I can't get past that. That's certainly a factor. And we know new coaching staffs have issues coming in, but they usually don't have a roster that they've inherited that is as good as what we had coming in. Okay. So after the bye week, we get into the mid-Novembers, and we travel to the 49ers for a rematch. We're at their field on an afternoon game. What do you think?
I have this as a loss. I think that I had them as a loss against when it was at home, but of course that had a lot to do with the Thursday night situation and not a lot of practice. In this one now you're in Santa Clara, you're in their home field, and you're in a situation where you're coming off the bye week. A lot of teams come off the bye week slower, even though people think, oh, they should come off the bye week and be ready. But you haven't been practicing with the intensity. You took a week off in there. So you're a little rusty coming out. And I just think that if the teams are even and you're playing rusty, you're going to lose.
Fair enough. I'll let you have all that because I've got it as a loss as well. And really you have to lose a certain amount of games. I mean, I'm looking at this schedule and I'm trying to figure it all out and where am I going to have my losses? Where am I going to have my wins? And I literally just had to put a loss in here because I didn't want to have, too many wins. But I feel like this team has got an opportunity to be competitive every week. And so it isn't
absolutely
so easy for me to just,
they should not be getting blown out in games.
Right. It's just not as easy. So, but I do have it as a loss. Cardinals at Seahawks on November 24th, right before Thanksgiving or right in that neighborhood.
That's a win.
I've got it as a win.
Yeah. The Seahawks have the better roster. They want Arizona to be good. They want the story of Kyler Murray and
they're better. They're better.
And that they want them to be good. I don't like that defense. And, Kyler Murray came in and showed me some things last year, but they don't really have the weapons around him that give me a lot of confidence. I think he'll play well, but does he have enough help? And I don't see them as being a good football team.
Yeah. I mean, they're on their way. Like Kyler Murray's back, second year now, past his injury. They've still got James Conner. Trey Benson is there. DJ Dallas, who we recently had, is now there. Marvin Harrison was the best wide receiver in the draft. Understand he's having an amazing camp. Michael Wilson from Stanford, which we liked in the draft the year prior, is there. I really do like their roster. It's kind of coming around. Bilal Nichols, Darius Robinson, their draft pick. LJ Collier is there, believe it or not. Kaiser White, Mac Wilson are their linebackers. David Collins. I like those guys. Buda Baker, a few guys on the back end. It's just a young roster. It needs some seasoning. It probably needs a few more pieces. But I do like the way things are going for them and Monty Ossenfort as their general manager. I think they are a year away though from being competitive in the NFC West. We'll see how that goes, but that's a win. For me, this next game is an interesting game because everyone's hyping the Jets. Like everyone is hyping the Jets. Now, I think that they should be hyping the Jets because of their defense, not because of Aaron Rodgers on the offense. Their defense is legit. Their offense is pretty decent. It can beat you in the run game with Breece Hall, Mike Williams, Garrett Wilson, Lazard, Corley. Those guys aren't going to really scare you too much. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. But their defense is actually really pretty stout, pretty legit. I would have thought Hassan Reddick would have been more excited to stay there and kind of work out some contract stuff. Maybe he does eventually. But without them there, I think they're a little less than. But I kind of penciled this in as a loss for Seattle. Not only is it on the road on the East Coast, but I really, truly believe their defense is better than advertised. And this is just one of those deals where I've got it as a loss.
The Jets are the most overrated team in the NFL right now.
That's what everyone says.
That's my take. I don't believe in them, and do not put that down as a loss because I have them going in on their win.
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers didn't play last year. He's now, what, 74? At some point, you are going to start to deteriorate, especially a guy that won with some athleticism and his ability to move. And now he's coming off, a year in which he didn't play, and he's getting older. The diminishing returns are going to start. And I just don't think that roster is as good as people want it to be. They're a New York team, and it's the biggest market in the NFL. And it's just like Dallas. Dallas and the New York teams are always overrated. They're always overrated every year because they're big markets, and it hits the financials for these organizations to predict good things for them because it gets people excited. I just don't think they're as good. I don't think they're bad. This isn't a bad football team. They're probably a playoff team, but they're probably a playoff team at, 10 wins, 10-7. They're not a dominant team. I just don't see it. So
I think they're going to be a top 5 DVOA defense, which makes them dangerous for me. Because if Aaron Rodgers gets going, they've got enough pieces. Maybe they make a midseason trade or whatever. This team could be competitive. I do agree they're probably a 10 to 11 win team for me, but they're pretty even, I think, with the Seahawks. And on the road, up and down season, I'm thinking it's potentially a loss. It's potentially a loss when you look at the whole schedule. It's one of those games that could go either way. I've just got it as a loss. Okay. Seahawks visit the Cardinals. Second matchup of the season. I've got it as a win in the desert, going to that game with my son.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same argument that we made 2 games ago, which straight up, I want to say, I hate it when the NFL does this, where they have 2 games against, the division games, and they're like right next to each other. It's because, if, let's say Kyler Murray gets hurt again, and those become cakewalk games. But if the Seahawks had to play them early on, well, then that one may have been competitive. And so it just hurts. It hurts competitive balance in the NFL when there's injuries. When they do that, that's my soapbox. I'll get off of that. But so the Seahawks are still the better team, and playing in the desert is not a road game for Seattle because it's not a home game for Arizona. That is a very Seattle friendly crowd.
Yeah. There'll be about 25 to 30,000 Seahawks fans there.
Yeah. And crazy. So it's practically a home game for Seattle. I mean, okay, it's not really, it's more of a neutral field, but yeah, I mean, they're not getting a home field advantage bounce there. So if the Seahawks won in Seattle, they're going to win down in the desert.
So one thing I'm noticing is you had kind of, win, loss, win, loss. And now you're on a roll. You got 3 wins in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm doing the flip-flop thing. I've got win, loss. And so you're coming on down the stretch, which I like. I like that. And I'm kind of blown in the wind a little bit on this thing. All right. Packers at Seahawks, Sunday Night Football. It's a big game. Big game. Talk about hype. I think Packers have got the hype. I think Jordan Love kind of showed that he could be a franchise guy. They've, trying to build a roster around that. They've got, decent pieces. They've got an okay defense. I still think they're somewhat overrated, but in a diminished NFC, I think they're still a top 4 team. And I've got this down as a loss for me. And I don't want it to be, but I do.
See, I was expecting you to pick that as a win. I put it down as a loss in part because I was looking at the stretch of games at the end of the season, and I'm like, they are not going to win 6 straight.
Right. You start penciling in shit that doesn't make a lot of sense necessarily, but you have to give the team a certain amount of losses or wins.
Well, yeah, because
it's one of those things for me. It's like I could go either way on this.
Teams are not going to play 100% every week. There's going to be things that happen. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be bad calls. And when the teams are really close, that can be enough to sway the game. And I think the Packers and Seahawks are really close. I think they're
That's why I think that team is actually going to be favored. I think Seattle might be favored by this time of the year, especially if they've got the record that, that I've got them as at that point. We'll see. But Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. All right, loss. Vikings at Seahawks. Got the other member of the
North,
the NFC North coming for a visit 2 weeks in a row, and I've got it as a win.
Yeah, the Vikings weren't good. They were starting over and rebuilding. But then they lost McCarthy. They're not even going to get a year of growth out of their rookie quarterback. Then they lost their young receiver, Addison. Also,
no, they didn't lose him. He missed like 3 practices, but he's back.
I thought he would. Okay, what I read was that he's back, he's practicing, but they may hold him out from contact because of it, and so that would mean to me that
he's quote unquote going to be ready to go week 1.
Yeah, we'll see. How much if he's on a pitch count. I just think that this is a team that's dealing with injuries. Didn't have a ton of talent to begin with.
Their offensive line is not good.
Their offensive line is bad.
Their defense
I think that's a
bad.
win, and an easy win, especially at home.
Yeah, interesting. I agree. I think this is a win. I think you've got to win these type of games in the NFL if you're going to be competitive and if you expect to go anywhere. And I think the Seahawks take care of business and get that one. Okay. Seahawks at Bears. This one is interesting in that you could, there are people talk about hype. You could listen to the hype and say that the Bears are going to be a challenger this year is in their own division and in the NFC. And I just don't see it. I don't think that they're ready. They weren't a good team last year, and Caleb Williams is not going to be the difference maker enough to put these guys in contention.
Justin Fields was not the reason they lost games.
Yeah.
He played pretty well. He was not the reason why they lost games. So trading him out for Caleb Williams, I think Caleb Williams is going to be an upgrade. He looks like he could be special.
Yeah. But they've got a young offensive line, and they've got a decent offensive line, but they're young. And then they've upgraded their wide receivers. I'll give them that. Right. But, and their defense is okay. It's
okay.
But it's like, it's maybe top 15, but it's not top 5. And their offense is way overrated. I think it's going to end up being somewhere in the 20-25 range. And Caleb Williams is going to have his struggles. And he's going to definitely have his struggles on Thursday Night Football at Lumen Field against the Seahawks defense. And I think
actually, it's in Chicago. That game's on the road.
Oh, it is in Chicago. Sorry.
But it doesn't, I don't think it matters. And that to me is a win. I don't buy into the Bears. I don't see them as being significantly improved over last year where they were bad. But I do think they've laid some groundwork to become really good fairly quickly starting next year. But they're not there yet.
All right. We end it at the Rams, January 4th or 5th, depending on the schedule. Again, we've already covered the Rams. We know what they're all about. It's on the road. Sean McVay. McDown. I can't even think right now. Our coach,
McDonald.
I was going to say McDaniel. He just got the contract today with Miami. McDonald against McVay on the road. Last game, things could be on the line. They are on the line for me. We could get the division. Like look at my win total. I'm at 11 wins right here. One more win gets the division, and I'm penciling it in as a win.
See, here's where I'm at. I got the Seahawks at 10 wins at this point. San Francisco has 11, but they've beaten Seattle twice, and so they've got the tiebreaker. So no matter what happens in this game, Seattle's going to be a wild card. The team fighting to get in is going to be the Rams. I think the Seahawks are in a position to rest some key starters and mail one in, and the Rams are fighting for their life.
So what's your final total?
it ends up being 10-7. But it does come down to that last game. I'm not picking the Rams to win because they're the better team. I'm picking the Rams to win because I think they're fighting for their life and Seattle's resting for the playoffs. And if that's not the case, if we get in and the Seahawks are still fighting, then that becomes an 11-16 to me.
Yeah. Interesting. I could see it go your way. There is no reason to believe that any of your predictions are misplaced or out of place. I think easily as well on mine. There's a couple games where we are different. The 49ers, the Dolphins, and
the Rams.
And the Rams. I've got them winning both games. I don't think that's a huge difference between us. And it's a young team with a young coaching staff, first out, but it has a veteran quarterback, and the defense seems legit to me.
See, here's
and
what
I just think
look
that's
at.
enough.
With looking at this, in your scenario, Seahawks start hot, and then coast. Okay, they win 3 straight at the end, to win the division or whatever. But they start really hot and then they coast. They're not playing as well in terms of.
Well, they face I think the meat of the schedule right there.
I think the meat of the schedule's in the beginning with the Dolphins,
Packers,
Jets, Lions, 49ers.
Packers, Jets,
Bills.
49ers, Bills are, to me, is not the gauntlet necessarily this year, but it makes it tough to put wins together back to back.
Yeah. So I've got them starting off and up and down, taking their lumps a little bit, but also giving some coming together, really getting everyone acclimated and then turning it on and showing that they are a team to beat, especially with that defense, and looking really strong, and nobody wants to play them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
you went 5-2 down the stretch.
Yeah.
And I went 4-1 down the stretch. So I think both of us kind of put it together at the end. Now, certainly I'll take my 12 wins and go, as either the first or second seed in the NFC, which would ensure a home game. I think we'd still get a home game if we win the NFC West. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, 10 wins, both in the playoffs. I've got 12 wins in the playoffs. We've both predicted playoff team.
Yeah.
And going down the stretch, I wouldn't imagine anybody wishing to play the Seahawks in the playoffs, even if they're the last wild card in.
Not that what we've seen of the defense. And I know preseason doesn't count that much, but what we've seen isn't just, low scoring games. We've seen domination when the starters are in there. 4 drives, 12 plays, like 9 yards or something like that.
13 yards.
Yeah, 13 yards. They didn't give up a first down when the starters were in there. They went 3 and out every time.
Yes. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that leads to, I guess, my super confidence or overconfidence, if you want. We'll see who's right. I'm not going to be embarrassed if the Seahawks go 9 wins or 10 wins. I'm going to be super happy if I'm correct, obviously, but I expect them to be somewhere in that neighborhood though. 10, 11, 12, depending on the way the ball bounces, et cetera, the way, if the team catches fire, if they hit teams at the right time, et cetera. There's a lot that goes into this, obviously. Injuries.
I mean, you have the Seahawks losing to the Jets, but when Aaron Rodgers gets hurt in week 5, you're not going to like that prediction. Okay. Yeah. I said that. And if he gets hurt in week 5, I am going to hear it from so many people. I was joking, everybody. I did not cause that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's an interesting schedule. I'm super confident though. It's going to be a super fun season, no matter what happens. No matter what happens, I think it's progress. Like if we end up, crap hits the fan, we end up with 7 wins for whatever reason. And we just look out of sync, out of sorts. It's a learning season. It's McDonald didn't have all of his players that he personally wanted on the roster. He kind of had and worked with what he had. And it takes time to build rosters. So I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying that's an alternative to pie in the sky is being more doom and gloom in that it's going to take, a couple of years to get this thing in place and to have them
I don't think that's
real
unfair.
competitive.
Like, because there's a lot of guys that they added, the 2 safeties and the 2 linebackers. And you got to remember, those guys were signed to 1-year contracts. They weren't viewed by the organization as a long-term investment.
They didn't even know if they wanted Geno Smith the first month that they came in. I mean, they were very vague in all their comments and very
He's our starter
as far
till
as
he isn't.
Yeah, right. So I mean, but I think they've come to like this roster a lot, and so have I. I mean, I think it's just it's a decent roster that can do some nice damage in the NFC West in particular. I think we can go toe to toe now with the Rams and the 49ers until I'm proven wrong. I think that we're more competitive in those games this year than we've been in the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. Go Hawks. Like, go. These games start to count. We don't have football this weekend. It's this last one, and then we get geared up for the Broncos, and I am so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Gonna be fun. I'm gonna be gone for a while. Keith's gonna have some fun replacement level hosts and even better, hopefully, to come in and put this show together for everyone and have previews and post game type stuff going on. So look out for all those shows, and I'll see you when I get back. Maybe while I'm gone, I might pop in. We'll see. We'll have to kind of coordinate something. I'm going to be 8 or 9 hours difference, so we'll see how that goes.
You're gonna get up at 2 a.m. to come.
Maybe
to come on the show because
maybe. All right. Let's get out of here. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and see you next time. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.